putting another break in there. Oh, thank you. Sorry. Hi, virtual folks. We're starting to get ourselves regained. Drop into it. We're going to try to hold half an hour. But instead of the outset, like, let's be present with what's alive in the room when it's alive. And this is not stuff we're going to solve in one day. And it's been 4 months since y'all last met, so there's a lot to So our goal for this next 30 minutes, really to bridge the two conversations that just happened in the breakout rooms, where we're trying to get ourselves kind of acclimated with all the set ourselves up to work together to make it happen. From questions of how do we meet, to how do we organize the resources that we are here in this room, to how do we expand our capacity by thinking about funding we have to maybe support contracts to support this work. How do we want to deploy our EJ coordinators to support this work specifically? There's lots of different things we could do in this role. Our hope, when I say hope, is we'll work with whatever comes out of it. It's like you sort of have like a 3-month rough action plan coming out of this part of the conversation. At least maybe like a sense of when we want to get together again. We weren't going to do like a formal report out to start, but I also think the nature of this time we're probably have reporting out involved in it. So things we feel like we really want to have happening over the next 3 months. It's kind of, I know the font's tiny, you can reference the timeline in your chart that's a little better for folks online. We'll try to just drop in some of the like must-dos. But again, this is all framed as what's, it's not framed as hows. So we're trying to translate this work plan from what's to hows together in this room over the next 30 minutes. Yeah, so with that, maybe invite anybody from the advisory council conversation. If you want to open and start, again, not a full report out, but just like any initial thoughts around sort of processing that came up, and then kind of back and forth that way, and share things with you very too. Just to clarify, because this came up in our meeting, each group is allowed to meet 8 times a year. For those meetings have to be closed. So we can meet jointly 8 times, and that we check the box as our 8 meetings for both groups, or we can meet 4 times jointly and have 4 separate individual things together as IC therapy. So I just wanted to like make those numbers clear for folks as you're starting to wrap into your brain, right approach to take. Yeah, I'm gonna open the floor. I don't have a super structured facilitation process yet. Like, let's just get it a little bit and see where we go.
It's a bit hard to hear the person who's speaking. I'm not sure if there's a better area or direction you could face. Thank you. I know. Thank you.
First try, don't try. Cool. I was just opening up the floor. Anybody who wants to jump in, anybody who's like, this is like broken around now in August, whatever, is up for you. In terms of the how. Go for it. Yeah, sure. I don't know. Alright, we're gonna stage.
I trained him for a wireless mic. Okay. So obviously on the so Kaya Morris, she, her, for those who are online and can't see or know who the heck's talking right now. So from what we talked about, I think it was a really powerful and important process. We talked about a few different things around how consensus is made, how dissenting voices are made, and actually both our statutory kind of responsibilities and our public-facing expectations, right? So for us as the advisory council, this is the first entity.
I think the microphone is cutting out entirely now, so we're getting.
I'm like eating them.
I might just want to give up using it because we're getting half mic'd and half not. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
No problem. Maybe I think it's when we close it. Maybe being too close is the problem. Is that better?
That's great. That works. I know. It's a mystery.
We gonna figure it out. One more meeting.
Yes,
We're good.
that works.
We're good. Okay, so my apologies. So I'll take it from the top. So essentially, in the advisory group, we talked about a number of things. We talked about consent. We talked about dissenting opinion. We also talked about kind of where we were at based on both what our statutory responsibilities are and as the advisory council, what the public's perception and needs from us are, which are very different components, right? So with that in mind, I'll take it from, we're gonna go backwards on that list. So essentially, there is no other entity that has the diversity of voice that is truly empowered to do anything around our climate crisis. And in this particular moment, there is both the expectation from the public that we are going to be able to help be that public voice, help to bring and create and make sure that those pathways are kept clear, and that there's a healthy distrust that. Once we split into the advisory council, it was very clearly an affinity space. That says a lot. It says a whole lot. So that being said, as we're thinking through how we're going to make decisions, one of the pieces that's going to be important is that our voices are honored, not just heard and received. We are here as peers. And then in many ways, our voices are kind of given deference. Because even as you heard from folks coming from the public, we often have a deeper knowledge of what's needed, what's wanted, and the processes that should take place, the strategies and the approaches that need to occur than you might find when you have to be face into a book going through and thinking about rules, regulations, and policies, right? So this voice needs to be given the primary, quite honestly, or at least the first voice, which is why I grabbed the mic. The other piece of this is that when we were talking about coming to decisions by consensus, we want to recognize that there's going to be dissenting voices. Consensus does not always mean universal voice. Sometimes there's acquiescence that happens. Sometimes there is silence that takes place. And so we need to ensure that if there are dissenting opinions, that those are captured and that those are shared publicly. Again, with us, we carry an extra burden because if we put something out there and it is not telling the story in totality, we are held accountable and the trust is broken by the community. Does that make sense? So I think that's what I got. I can let anybody else tap in. I hope you heard all of that because I don't remember what I said.
For the group, we got feedback from everybody online that Kaya's been the fairest person to hear so far.
Figuratively heard loud and clear.
All right. Yeah, so we just forget.
Awesome. Really great feedback from online, and thank you, Kaya. Is this good? Okay, great. Any other advisory council members want to share report back from the breakout room? If not, we can move to interagency report back. Claire?
You hold the mic right here and speak loud.
Yeah, I'll just come on because I speak quietly. Okay, here. Claire McElveny, she, her pronouns, and with the Department of Public Service. I have a question about what you said about
the role of the EJ Advisory Council, and it's related to how this body also works with the Just Transition Subcommittee, which is where we met, and the work that was started in that group, which I think there's been a long history of trust building and maybe trust breaking, and like thinking about the role of that community and the guiding principles that were created there. And I just wanted to ask that. There doesn't have to be an answer, but knowing that the guiding principles are part of what we're doing here and thinking about that as well, and the voices in that group too, if that makes sense. You don't have to respond if you don't want to, but.
No, it's no problem. Okay, thank you. So for context, so it's Kaya Morris back on the mic. So and that's what Kit was referring to, Claire was referring to earlier. So within this, as it relates to the two interplays, that trust was broken, as we said, right? This is a learning process, and this is what we are trying to change. This is what we were trying to change. There were whole committees of the Climate Council where there were folks from most impacted groups. There were folks coming with clear voice from Indigenous and trying to use traditional ecological knowledge. There were people who felt tokenized. There were people who felt silenced. And so we have to get this right, especially as we are living through the crisis, because the ability for patience from the public and trust from the public is almost non-existent right now. So we got it. We can't. It's a different day. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I meant more like, how do we bring those voices that are still engaged?
Right.
I think there's been questions in that group of what their role is.
Correct. And that is the challenge. So I'm sorry. So what Claire was saying, I'm sorry for those who couldn't hear it on the mic, it's asking, so the Just Transition Subcommittee, and recognizing again for members of the public that the Climate Council is its own deal. Separate set of laws that created it, the way that it functions is different. They are currently in the implementation phase of many of the recommendations that came forth. This entity is different. That said, those folks are still bifurcated off from most of the larger processes. They are still but one smaller voice with not real representation on the counselors themselves who have the decision-making power. So how we engage those, that is something we did not discuss today, and we will want to figure that out. It's a difficult challenge because it shouldn't be on the advisory council's folks to figure that out. But again, we also don't want to leave anyone behind. And they're still within a very unequal system. They're still mired in an unequal system that this entity probably can't fix. So how do we do that? So it will be similar and parallel processes, I think.
Great. Anybody from the Interagency Committee want to speak a little bit to what was grappled with in our room and or reflect on how we take what, yeah, please go. Yeah.
I'm not from the Interagency Committee, is there a high tower? And I don't know how much we went over this, but I definitely think that one of the things, like speaking to what Kai is speaking to, like we're not going to get all of the voices in the room, especially not in year one. But I think it's important that we get more and more voices into the room. And then also that means folks who have been in the room and just haven't been heard. That means folks who have given up. That means folks who have never been in the room. And so I think one of the things, and I don't know how much we talked about this because I went to the bathroom, I'm sorry, that I think is going to be really important is I think that, I don't know if other people are feeling it, but I'm assuming Kaya, and I know that I'm feeling like a certain amount of, like there's a certain amount of fearfulness that comes with like attaching your name to something like this, right? And saying like trust us, this is going to be done a little bit differently. It's not going to be done perfectly, but we're going to try to do it better. And that's our reputations on the line in a lot of ways. And so finding ways, so like, I think that's part of the thing of like saying like, if we say this is how we need to do it, regardless of how bureaucracy says that we need to do it, like trusting in that. And then also just being really clear and then having pathways. So I think there's like this amount of, we don't have like, none of us have time as we're not, this isn't our full-time job. We're just, one step above a volunteer on being here and saying like, here's some of the things that like we want to do. And so how do we get some of that interdependence, but still are able to rely on you all to do that? Because we can't do the community engagement on our own. We're like 10 people, you know what I mean? So how do we work with you all without that being the only avenue, while still having some distance from you, where when people are frustrated and say like, oh, the Agency for Natural Resources is doing this, that they still feel like they can come to us and say that. That's it.
Super helpful reflection. Thank you, Zaraya. Interagency folks, anything you want to reflect back or anything you want to share from your breakout room? Amy? I think I can reach you.
Oh, good, look at that. So many things going on right now. I do want to report out quickly, but also just holding right now, I'm reading The Sum of Us by Heather McGee, and this like the public good, like really investing in the public good and really being like collective and working collectively. And just that the government has caused so much harm, and you know, here we are showing up to try and move and change. So just really appreciating what was said. And the Interagency Committee, I think, was really taking up a lot of questions about how to implement this law. Technical questions around how to do the benefits reporting, how do we set up civil rights and EJ complaint systems within the agencies, and trying to talk about, and we also questions around how do we organize, how can we meet, how often, and I'm looking at the list just to kind of quickly report out on the questions that were asked in that space. There was a really good idea about doing a road show and trying to really start to like garner support and articulate to leadership in the different agencies how important this work is, and that it's legal. I mean, we have to, you know, implement this law. So that was a good idea. Anything else? Anyone else wants to chime in with on that?
I can add, Thebes, if I don't know if anyone else who's on the, I'm not on the committee officially, but I was in the room.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, I was just gonna add, I think, sorry, it's hard to read the room from here, but just a need also for agencies to build capacity within their agencies to do the work. So it's not just the members of the committee that are present, and recognizing that I think I also heard that a lot of the committee representatives from their agencies are also representatives in other work, such as their DEI work, and so figuring out how we can help or just identifying the need to build capacity within the agencies was another reflection I heard from just listening.
Yeah, what I was going to say is this conversation with the IAC around capacity did segue into a conversation about just how do we want to use our resources that we have available to us, which also speaks to your point, Soraya, about how do we resource y'all effectively as well. So, you know, both how do we want to deploy, like how do you all want to deploy Alex and myself in terms of support at the agency and advisory council? And we have funding that can go into contracts, whether that's like community liaison contract to help facilitate some of the public input in a, you know, in a well done way. We talked about maybe contracts for subject experts who could go into the agencies and do some of the technical work, but who might also have that like separation enough to be able to call agencies into account for culture change and larger, like not just leave it only with agency staff to hold ourselves accountable, but maybe bake in some more support and accountability, thinking about, you know, having others. So I just want to put on our radar that part of in this how conversation, if we want to move down the road of contractors, essentially that would mean Alex and I working with y'all to draft a request for proposals, putting that out, putting the word out, and then managing that at A&R, but on your behalf. So that's something we can talk about in terms of short-term action steps. If that's a capacity building piece, that's important. I think what this conversation also raises a question for you all is, the benefit spending report and the technical guidance that will help agencies actually start to do the really kind of like get down to the program level and say, who are we benefiting and not, and do something about it. You're like getting into the work itself. That benefit spending report is due in November. That includes a 40-day public comment period and is sort of the next deliverable where we have a chance to model meaningful consultation that gives deference and first voice to the advisory council, right? So I think I'm curious folks' thoughts at this point of how we might start to bridge these kind of two things. Yeah, Dave.
We're not able to hear anything right now.
Because I muted it. I'm so sorry. Dave just clarified that the reports from the agencies, or the spending reports, aren't due until April. It's just the guidance for doing that research that's due.
All right, I hope you guys can hear. I'm Abby Willard from the Agency of Agriculture. How's that audio better? Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
The only piece that I just wanted to add from the interagency side was an acknowledgement that this is new work for government to do, and that while it's separate from the Climate Council and it's separate from maybe each agency's work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, it does require an organizational change and culture change, which there's motivation and interest to do, but it's going to take a different set of resources and collaboration and engagement than how we are probably typically accustomed to doing work in government. So I just recognize that this is time consuming and it's going to just take longer than we probably have allocated in the timeline at moments, but just appreciative that we can do this in consult with the advisory council and take leadership from the advisory council. And so anyway, those are just starts beginnings of some of the how we're going to get work done in partnership, recognizing how much growth is needed within government to support this type of engagement.
I'll try to stop talking so much, but for the guidance or the reports, I think it's also, maybe I just want to get us away from bureaucracy and just setting a culture expectation. I think it becomes very easy when you've got a council or a board, which I'm sure lots of folks have seen on boards, is when you bring stuff to them, they just look at it and they just critique some small stuff and then it moves through. So I don't want that to be what the advisory council does. Right? Like we should be partners. So the things that were hard, like if that came up, like that's what should be coming to us, not as close to finish line as possible, that looks as much as possible, regardless of how hard it is. And so I think that part of it for me is like the meaningful consultation piece is not trying to get to a perfect product so that we can say rubber stamp it, but like really being an advisory thing about like, okay, what was hard, what were we not actually able to do, like why couldn't we count like some of the things, like were there some like moral judgment in terms of how we're counting things, and this is why we decided what we did. So I guess trying to set the tone for not doing it in a bureaucratic way and kind of be open and have a partnership on this.
Ask questions with whether or not that informs the way we meet and the way we schedule meetings, and whether we schedule them jointly like this or staggered so that we can get that kind of ongoing feedback along the way, and or so that we can truly partner in developing what materials are developed. I don't know the answer, but I think there's something in there that could inform our decision about how and when to meet, whether to meet together or separate.
Doing it again, doing it again. Talk, taking the mic again. So, thank you. This is how we adapt, y'all. We adapt, folks. We have to be adaptable. So I do appreciate opportunity to speak again. This Kaya Morris, her. So in thinking about this, there's two things. First of all, can I put in a plug that we should get a facilitator? Can we get a facilitator for a paid facilitator? And they'll have the tools, so we'll know which one we're using. So we'll have the protocols and the tools, and they'll be able to help make sure that the voices are called on and everything like that. The other piece on this is, so if we do have separate meetings, I would like, so if I'm coming to an advisory council meeting, I would appreciate having somebody from the interagency come and present to us what they talked about while we weren't together. So we're not only hearing it once we get back together in unison, like as a joint group, because these things are happening in real time. And you all might have been talking about something that we needed to hear about, and we may not be able to even tune in as a participant. That's also an important question too, as well, as so if we do choose to zoom in to the other meetings, how that, like, where is our voice in that space? Is there a space where we're saying, okay, I'm not in your group, but I have some thoughts. How does that happen? Or are we sort of treated as members of the public? I guess that would be a great clarification for me.
All right. Carla, you've had your, yes.
Yes. Hello, can everyone hear me? Fine?
Yes.
Carla, her Agency of Natural Resources, and I really just wanted to take the time to thank you, advisory council members, and Soraya, you brought this up for trusting this process or hoping that it's going to unfold the way that it's meant to unfold, or the way that's expected to unfold. I am very thankful, and I'm getting emotional for the courage of saying yes, one more time, and just being brave, in sharing your lived experiences, and just trusting that the message and what you have to share is not gonna get lost. I am really encouraged by the folks who are at the table, and like I mentioned in my welcoming comments, when I look around, I see opportunity, and I think and I'm going to speak for myself, but I think the other members of the interagency committee have heard the message of centering voices around, underserved, historically marginalized, mostly impacted individuals. I think it's moment, it's the time we're seeing it. Once we leave this building, this safe building, where we're protected from the elements, we see it all the time. And yes, honoring your advice, honoring your feedback, and centering and allowing that information to lead the work is fundamental. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Carla. Pass it on.
Yeah, we're running up about like the half-hour mark, and I feel like I heard two kind of concrete questions that we can try to get to, which there was a proposal for going for a outside facilitator, which requires us to get the, okay. So yeah, so this is where we are, a proposal for us going through the process of finding a good facilitator, which I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to happen for our next meeting, but we can get the ball rolling. Great to have sense coming out of here who wants to even be at the early stages of RFP development and outreach plan, and just thinking through how we can do that in a good way. So that's like one next piece to touch in, and then I think this clarifying question Kaya raised of like, what does it look like when we're meeting with each other versus a joint meeting versus a visiting your meeting versus we're separate and you report out. So again, maybe anchoring into thinking, this meeting our goal is to like center the advisory council voices first around these core principles of engagement. Give that groundwork for the interagency committee to start drafting. I'm curious, how do we carry that same process that we for longer and the public involvement more in reading and as our next goal. So just kind of concrete next set of questions.
Yeah, on the how, this is Carla, Agency of Natural Resources. On the how question, I am intrigued to know the room, like a room temperature with regards to consensus, and when consensus is not reached, what's going to be the decision-making threshold for us to get to an agreement and carry forward the conversation.
Councilor Ryan did a very nice encapsulation for us. I want to encourage that.
Great, so we decided as a council, before you all came back, that this is what I'm answering, that we would make decisions by consensus. And so it doesn't matter if the state law is asking us for a vote, it doesn't matter if there's anything else, we will try to frame up some document that says like why we are saying yes to this or why we're saying no to it, and noting any dissenting opinions, whether that's an individual basis or an opinion basis. That's how the council will be making decisions.
I don't know that we got so, yeah.
Why not?
Samaya, oh great, go ahead.
What about
Did you have your hand up?
Oh, I think I had your hand up.
No, I was scratching my lip.
So sorry. Yeah, we didn't get too deep in the weeds around that in the interagency council. I think we're kind of working on the assumption that consensus was our goal, maybe we get into technicalities. Any interagency committee members, like that proposed approach feels like it can hold for both groups in terms of clearly documented justification, clearly documented dissenting voices.
We agree on the. Do you want to add that or do you want to? Well, I'm sorry.
Sure.
One more thing. Hi, everyone there. This is Mariana from the Advisory Council. And one more thing that we agree for consensus is that continue the conversation until everybody either thumbs up, meaning we are all ready to move on. I'm not gonna oppose that I need more conversation. It's just not working for me, so let's continue talking. No way, I'm not moving forward. I'm opposing this. So kind of like three ways of agreeing, and it takes time. In my organization, I'm with Hunter Free Vermont, and we do a very similar decision-making process, and it does take time. So need to be prepared to be patient and yeah, just fun talking. We'll get there, and then of course knowing the consent. Yeah.
Question.
All right, this is Mariam from Environmental Justice Council. So maybe I'm not clear what is going on or something, but what I want to emphasize is whatever Environmental Justice Council should be decided, whatever is like continuing conversation, thumbs up, down, whatever, that should be based on going to the communities, that what they are comfortable with and what they want, instead of, because we are representing them. It's not our opinion that would be decided, that would be based on communities' opinions that would be reaching out.
And one more thing, a good way to do that, what Marianne is suggesting, is that some of our meetings are held in spaces that are already operating and functioning in communities, and we go to them, host this meeting, and to sit in their space. We ask for permission to be in the agenda and have this conversation in front of them with their input. We don't ask them to come to us. We don't take away from their time. We squeeze in their agendas. We ask for permission and we humbly say, in your opinion, because you are the experts. And we recognize them that way by visiting, by going and sitting with them, having a coffee and having a conversation. So that, let us keep that in mind. Somehow we gotta make that happen. Thank you, Maria, for bringing that up. Yeah.
Jennifer Bird, Conservation District Advisory Council member, and I think what I heard from Carla's question was maybe relating to how the Interagency Council, the Advisory Council, can make a decision together, and thinking about what is, what this whole to-do list is. Really, the Interagency Committee has a lot of deliverables, and we have a lot of advice to give on those deliverables. We've come to our agreement on how to put the word out to you. And I guess really, maybe that's what we're talking about now, but one thing that I would recommend as a bare minimum would be if the Interagency Committee agreed that they wouldn't make a decision that was, there was dissent or not agreement from advisory council. I don't think that's like in text or anything like that. So that would be like a bare minimum agreement.
That was a little hard for us to hear. Could someone repeat that, please?
Yeah. No, I love looking this up. I'm trying to zero in your proposal. Practice. So there is a specific proposal, I think I heard it, that Interagency Committee is charged with creating or being the lead on something. They do not move forward in the consensus if there's a dissenting position from just the Interagency Committee, or would you like A&R also is charged with creating
We're still having trouble. I'm not sure if it's like the magic spot of where Kaya was standing.
Is that better?
A little bit, yes.
The proposal is that any deliverables that move forward, that there's another group besides the advisory council that's the lead on, sort of responsible for creating, whether that's the covered agencies, interagency committee, or the agency of natural resources, that we agree to not move forward if the advisory council is a dissenting position, they are not able to internally consent that the path we propose is the right path. Is that a fair summary? Anybody have feelings they need to work out to get to a place of feeling good with that kind of agreement?
I think it's a little vague. I think it's a little too vague. For which components are all potentially
all of it.
So it's really vague.
So yeah.
Within the EPA law, in which we consult with advisory council.
Let's give our timeline and need to get technical about where and when things show up.
So you're saying that if there's some work outside of what is being proposed here, that isn't implicated?
Right. Like specific to consultation called out, I mean, each agency has so much going on.
So there was feedback that the request was made. I think what maybe is being asked is it specific to what is being charged in this law versus is it specific to all of the agencies, all of their work? I would argue it should be all of the work, but I could understand that you might want to limit it to, because hopefully we wouldn't touch anything that would have anything to do with justice. But I would say as it pertains to environmental justice. Or you could limit it to what is specifically laid out think what you're supposed to be asking for advice about.
And the past has been also, in the interest of time, we can come back to you all with this in writing, that we can then go through another round of process. We don't have to have it all figured out.
Carla, Agency of Natural Resources. I have a question, and I think it was the paraphrasing. I think it was thrown in there, the deliverables. I think the deliverables are stated in the law, and so we have to, deliver them in a timely manner. I think my question is, are we talking about interim processes and interim decision-making processes that are gonna help us get to our destination, which is, for example, the identification of the principles? So those interim steps, is that what we're referencing here? Or are we talking about the deliverables themselves? Because with regards to the deliverables, I think there's less, I actually don't think that there's much that can be done in terms of adapting those. Yeah, I think I just need clarity with regards to what the proposal is.
Are you drawing a distinction between guidance documents versus agencies produce? For example, the core principles of community engagement. The interagency committee will draft by September. I think the proposal here would be that anybody on the advisory council is a firm like I'm not going to consent to this position and ways are written, that we would continue to work on them before we as the IEC said, nope, good enough, onward. However, to Carla's point, then the question is, are you all also going to want to be the phase of approving each of the 11 covered state agency plans that are based on that guidance? Is that the distinction that we need to get into? You all are on to do that anyway, right? Yes. I think it has in that timeline essentially. Let's charge to an agency, right? We're going to have this agreement, right? So we're getting clear.
Yeah, I just wanted to, spell it out.
Yeah.
And then get feedback on it.
We're clarifying. Yeah, great.
Hi, my name is Mervik. I'm the editor of Education. In terms of, I want to speak up in terms of the decision-making process. I think Philips and Alex and I, we had a meeting where provided some feedback what I was thinking. One thing I don't want to see here, or when we take our decision, at least for my department, I don't simply want to see, our leadership taking the decision without implicating the student, for instance. But most time, we do a lot of stuff just at the leadership level, and we don't really go to the grassroots, which means is actually the student. We must go to them, listen to them, and collect the kind of the staff they want to hear and they want to get implemented, with HA. Otherwise, honestly, I don't want it. I don't want it. If I am just here and talk to the leadership, because at the end of the day, I know they may or may not do the right thing, and it's all my student population, my life so much. So I want to see more, by something I want to do.
Appreciate that. And young people are not specifically identified representatives. In my mind, I think it's really important pathway to connect those two people. Courses in this works, I think we presented that. Yeah.
My apologies on guidance with regards to the timeline. So we're way behind schedule. So I hear what's happening with the state where y'all are quite getting your boots about what this timeline means. The recognition of the fact that we've lost time and community engagement takes time has to be held. Also, as one of the people who fought like hell for this bill to be passed, the intent was to create a very clear point of both listening and honoring the voices of the folks that are here. So as we're saying it, it may feel vague because it's not familiar, because the state has failed to do this. So it's not something y'all are used to, but we're demanding it in this moment. So I just want to let you know that even if the law got watered down as it did, and got changed up as it did, the public has an expectation that y'all need to hold, or they will hold us accountable. And some of us don't want our names attached to that, if y'all know.
Yeah, and it just speaks to like quality consensus is not what was laid out as what we're used to. You can't help it. Like, giving us power was scary. We're like, I know you're not going to do tomorrow. It's voters. It's a lot less scary when we build trust with each other, hear each other, and see that process from day one. And we're planning to start writing this. Not a word as we put to paper. There's no reason we can't know right now what we are seeking from the advisory council to address that in our drafting process. That's how we get to. Yeah, just a plug. So like, great.
Thank you, Jennifer Wright again. And I wanted to make a distinction because I think maybe when you say like it needs to be clear and it gets too vague. There is a role, there's this ongoing role for the advisory council in the city, and then there's these immediate tasks. I think what I'm initially suggesting is a decision-making agreement on those, the principles of engagement, the documents that are coming out of this policy, the mapping tool guidance, guidance. And I think we also have to have the conversation right now today about ongoing consultation on adopting and amending policies, procedures, plans, guidance, and rules, and anything that's covered by the CJ law, in addition to us, the advisory council reviewing proposed rules for implementing law and having our own internal consensus process. So that might look like a bit different, and I think that we should be a bit differently, but I would still advocate for the Interagency committee not directly go against what the advisory council recommends. Maybe that's a bigger breakdown of that.
How do we feel about holding that intention with these deliverables right in front of us and talking about a pathway to get to that place of consent together? Finishing the core principles that will start today, and the benefits and against in November. And potentially we could take some time with the advisory council to write this out explicitly in a way that we get like a full consensus kind of an ongoing way about moving forward. Are there any blocking concerns about that being the appropriate consensus for these deliverables right? Thumbs up.
The first question I thought I could give a thumbs up to. The second question, are there any dissension or the concerns? I don't know how to do it.
Oh, sorry. Why don't you put your thumb up as clear as you can on that proposal that we will hold full consensus from the advisory council before we move rules and benefits and guidance. Any thumbs down or sideways that? Yeah. Okay, online folks. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I just. Parna, Agency of Natural Resources. So I wanna be clear with what the question is. So the question, and I'm gonna do like a repeat back just to ensure that I understand what the question is that with regards to the creation of the principles that are going to guide the community engagement plans, what's being suggested is that we engage in a process where the decision making is going to be led by consensus. And what that means, ultimately, there's like a taking that a few steps further. And if there's disagreement coming from the advisory council as a collective, that it's no what you put forth interagency after consultation and feedback is given, that if you say meh, then the proposal is that we should not move forward if it's a meh. And if it's okay, then we will move forward. But if there's not necessarily like a strong disagreement, it's still not moving forward.
Wanted to just try to put some text to what we're trying to consent to, just so that we
I think
can have like a shared understanding of what we might be agreeing to.
So we have decided to make decisions by consensus. When something comes to you, we will either say yes as a group, although there are these concerns present within that yes, or we'll say no as a group, although we appreciate these things within that no. So you won't get from us a like 6-4 split or anything like that. We're going to come to you and we're going to say that either could not get to consensus, maybe you should work with us some more, or we're going to say yes, or we're going to say no. So there's not going to be a we don't know, there's going to be a work with us, yes or no, that's coming from the group. There might be some points within the yes that we're like, well, we really hope you address these things, because as a group, this is our enough of us had this worry, or one of us had this worry strongly enough that we think this should be addressed. So it won't be like, we're giving you a 70%, so I think we will try to be clear on our expectations. And in return, we hope that our deliberations will mean something in your decision making. Is that a fair assessment?
Awesome. Cool. Any other clarifications or needs for us to move forward with that understanding? Yeah.
Oh, stop feeding. Oh, no, I mean, she has to come over there, you.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's a question, but it's an observation that I support that approach, and listening to and respecting that opinion. I also know that timelines in city government are really stressful, and personally reflect that feeling a lot of anxiety myself. And it feels important to have a conversation about what we will do if we run up against timelines being an issue, because that has been my experience where trust has been broken. And it feels important to have an understanding of how we deal with it before it presents itself as an issue in a last minute.
Can deadlines be extended 1 minute?
Yes.
Yes.
I think there's and your request can be made, and we can say it changed. Request can be made.
I was sorry. I don't think so. That should be a problem. Like a deadline. This is the day you have to do it. I mean, this is a volunteer role, and there might be a delay from our side, even, But I think you guys can facilitate us and accommodate that delay a little bit, like always do so far. So I think we should be flexible in that. It should not be a problem. That's my feeling, but they should be able to answer me better.
And this is Mariana again, and we're next to each other, Mariana and Mariana, good luck. I think we should give it a try and not be scared and move forward and see what happens. And in 3 to 6 months,
let's have this conversation again. Hey, people, it's not working for any of us. We gotta rethink of this. Or, hey, you're doing great. Let's do us. And, you know, we have to learn to live with our anxieties if we want to change the process and the mechanisms that causes the anxiety. Because I feel the same way, and I'm like already having a tummy ache. But really, let us breathe and let's give it a try, see what happens, and let us jump in. The water should be nice and warm.
I think the caution on my part, with regards to the language is expectation that's being created, for our part, perhaps. I just want to make sure that what I am hearing is what's actually being heard, and in the interest of keeping that trust, and cultivating it. So that's why I am particularly careful about understanding what the question is, so that I can commit to what's being asked of me, not what I perceive to be the question. So that's where I'm coming from. I just want to ensure that what I hear is what's being presented.
But writing the language,
yes,
big,
yes,
maybe.
I am very visual.
Yeah,
especially with the second language situation.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to shout out to someone. I really appreciate the timeline question, because I was like, I think that's going to be where because it's not, I think we're all testing and hoping that we're not going to have that we're not going to have the conversation where we're like, we don't want to work with you anymore, we're not going to address these concerns. I think what we will bump up against is, well, there's the deadline, we want to meet it. We're not as beholden to deadlines on the council, so we'll say we don't want to meet it, we want to make sure we get this right. So I appreciate flagging that, and I think that will be the barrier, so I'm glad you called that out. And I also just appreciated something that you just said, right, which I'm also not a good listener, but I'm a reader, so I also appreciate things being written down. And then I'm hoping that this is like us, and I'm sorry, I'm speaking a lot. I'm hoping this is us wrapping up this part of it, and I would really also like to get, because I think I did get a chance to address this with Maria, but as like, I am out of a position where I'm constantly making decisions and trying to represent people, and it is not clear cut, right? People usually have different opinions, and you have to make a call about which ones you're going to prioritize. And I think part of that is having the information, and so I think I'm still really, I think what I care about more than anything else is like, how are we going to get the information? And I think there's both something to going into communities. I hope we don't do it in this forum because this is an intimidating forum if all of us are there, and we all have our own arguments or own side conversations, but I hope that there's like a smaller version of this that can happen at the agency level, some of the council members, where we say, we're talking about housing today, we know this is important to you, let's talk about housing, or let's talk about whatever you think is important, because I think that's, for me, another one of the jobs that we hold, is I think there's going to be priorities that the agency has that they're trying to move forward, and then I think there's going to be community things that are being heard, and those are always going to match up, and I think our job will be to try to hold both of those environments up. Thank you.
Okay, so with this understanding, how do we want to approach starting to write these kind of extended reports that you want in November to feel like we have enough time to get all the voices in the room, that in the room to feel good about what we're doing? Do you feel any instincts of like, let's at least get something on the date for August? We want to have joint or separate as the next step, and if you're not ready to throw that out yet, outside of the follow survey. And that's a totally fine way for us to approach this. Thoughts on that? Next steps, yeah.
This is Grace from ACCD. I just think from the interagency perspective, getting that feedback on the open meeting law, and if there is any way we meet as a subcommittee and have it not count, that would invite more discussions of what the next meeting will be. Maybe we can meet as a subcommittee next or something.
Yeah, so Grace is introducing this, like, the potential of using subcommittees, and this came up in our interagency breakout conversation umbrella, like, what's the right balance of creating space for there to be public involvement in the agency decision making, probably like, trying to like shape that paradigm up a little bit, but also being like, somebody need to get a room and hammer everything out and notice a meeting and all of that is a lot of extra burdens. I think us finding the sweet spot with that is going to be a key kind of process question. I feel like there's something a little like, we can have this for a minute. Should we do, like, you're gonna get a temperature check on like a follow-up survey, maybe on like our next steps, next meeting point, things like that, or do we want to try to keep patching this out now? An hour left. Really nice to be able to just like drop into some kind of feedback moment outside just reflects the algorithm.
What is the other option for how we spend that hour?
We can continue in this realm, I think, of the how we want to work together, which is beautiful, kind of the groundwork for everything else. Or we can kind of transition outside, assume we're gonna get another thing probably on the books and get into just like starting to talk through the core engagement principles. So that may be what we just want to take into the next meeting, and figure out how we want to do this now. Yeah, any feedback? I'm sure hands of who would rather like stay in the process conversation and get some stuff hammered out for the time we have left. Not try to take on brainstorming the core engagement principles right now, show of hands, versus like, let's take a pause, make some cool decisions, and let's do some. As he answers the second option, engagement next step. Is that a hand up? No. Oh, it's a plan. Okay, great. I'll take alternative option. No.
The question is whether or not this is a good chance for us to exercise deferring to the advisory council. Based on how we're feeling wired right now, or something we want to dig into. And maybe that's not fair. I'm saying that I feel like we're putting people on the spot. I apologize if that came across like that.
Folks online, Dave just proposed defaulting to the advisory council on how we want to spend the rest of our time together.
That was really kind. I don't feel put on the spot. I usually don't. I think I'm okay, because I think we still have some open questions about like subcommittees and stuff like that. I agree it'd be easier to iron it out before we figure out how we can meet. I think it's going to be very important to figure out how to meet in smaller groups if we're going to get this work done, because I don't know how more we would do it with just 8 meetings and 4 meetings. I guess as we go to like the community engagement principles, I have a lot of thoughts. And I think one of the like things about like community engagement is I think it's really hard to engage people until they know what they're engaging on. And I think it was kind of the same thing with today. There were notices of it as it said, learn about what's happening in environmental justice in Vermont, which is not what this meeting was. And so be careful about like what we're engaging people on. And what is engage on. Thank you.
Just to be like super practical with it.
Heather, we're having a hard time hearing again.
I said this before in the other section of the meeting, but we have 8 meetings.
Hello? Is it possible to move to a different spot?
Can't hear you.
What are you?
Could I unplug?
You can't hear well, or you can't hear at all?
Was going by, so.
I can hear
Okay,
now.
so what I'm saying is having one meeting for every, like at the very least, I'd love to have a meeting every month till the end of the year. There's 6 months left in the year. And I personally, like from the we haven't talked about this as an advisory council, but like, I just don't think we're at a point where we would say like, we want to have a subcommittee that breaks up. I get it for the interagency committee. So those are all good questions to be asking, but yeah, I think super simple. Let's have a meeting every month for sure on the books.
Cool. So I have a proposal for meeting every month for the rest of this year at least. Was that a joint meeting recommendation?
Actually, no, I would love to have a couple staggers.
Couple staggers.
Two separate and, you know, 1 and 1 and then one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we want our next touch point? Hang on, let me pause. I want to go back to the big picture question. As this advisory council, where do we want to spend the next chunk of time? Just because if we start to get into this, I think we get into, you want to go into community engagement?
Sorry, did we decide on the consensus piece?
Yeah, the proposal was made. Did we just make an official vote?
Yeah, let's make sure we do that.
Maybe we can use the idea of Jennifer, as the advisory council by trying our new method.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so the proposal for consensus, as has been,
I do want to say that I don't think what's written captures the clarification that was provided after my question, which I really appreciated. So if we could capture that, that would be great.
Who fe-
You put last sentence, right? Oh, I can't see it.
yeah, let me read the whole thing and then we'll have one more round of clarifying as needed and then see if we can get to consensus. So the consensus point as written is the Interagency Committee and Agency of Natural Resources will not finalize the core principles of community engagement or benefit spending report guidance if the advisory council is not in a consent position. To be clear, there is active dissent for advisory council members that are unresolved. A longer-term joint consensus approach will be written out for review and approval in the future. So how are we going to handle this the long term? And consent decisions will include a written justification that articulates any concerns that still exist, even if consensus has been reached or if consensus has not been reached. So regardless of the outcome, any positions of I'm here, but I'm saying okay would be written out so folks know what's going on. So. Because it felt like it felt like written clarity for the whole long-term, long future, including like post-reporting stuff might be worth a conversation. And right, yeah.
So I think we're saying the deliverables created, I think, and I could be wrong, but I think Jennifer's asked for was the deliverables referred to in the law. Is that right?
Yeah, the deliverables that are coming out of this body.
Yeah.
The short-term tasks.
Okay. So this was the compromise. It was let's hold it for these two deliverables and clarify, but do we need to clarify? The alternative proposal is like, let's just say this is how we're going to work for all the major deliverables that this group is responsible for in this law specifically. So this would be edited. That would include covered agencies. Yes, in terms of those deliverables. You want to come up and, yeah. Actually, let me. Yeah, there you go. Sorry.
Okay. Hi, this is Haley, they, them. I also know there were a ton of public comments set out in the agenda, and I don't know that we've specifically set aside time for those yet, but I also don't want to get in the way of the consensus building and the discussion that's going on. But that's something that Ching wanted to share of like, she ended up leaving because there hasn't really been like time set aside for that quite yet.
Thanks, Haley. Yeah. I apologize for not being clear that public input has been invited in this conversation, but B, I haven't fully gotten a consensus point from these bodies that are in charge of this, not me, that's how y'all want to do business. So there's a process point actually, maybe to clarify that's made this messier than it should have been. So thank you, Haley, for like bringing that to our attention. And I would welcome anybody in the public to speak up in terms of, does anybody have concerns with the public giving any input on how this decision should play out? Okay, great. Let's do a thumbs up.
The legal team would be okay with putting the covered agencies in this statement. I think that we probably can't make that decision.
So we
can make it for our lives.
Okay.
Maybe, Carla, could you give Caitlin some space too
Thanks.
So yeah, I'm trying to give some space for this to play out, obviously. I can speak to what the law says. The Agency of Natural Resources did not write what is in statute. And it was the result of various stakeholders at the table, and that included the timelines. And the language related to consultation and voting. Consultation wasn't defined, so that frankly is a vague area. I see that as open to some interpretation, some decision-making here. There was a specific distinction with the vote, and that was on rulemaking and allowing for a vote prior to proceeding through a rulemaking process. Sorry, folks, there's a really heavy rain, folks online, so hopefully that's not messing with the sound. I feel like the consideration, like, again, for awareness, the timelines were incorporated by the General Assembly, largely informed by stakeholders to ensure some accountability and progress. But we just need to recognize that consensus takes a lot more time. So that has to kind of be built into the overall expectations for, how far along we get by those certain sort of check-in points.
Can you clarify that though?
Sure.
Because the timeline had this process starting months ago. Some of us are in the room for the first time just now. So the timeline that was agreed upon is not actually based in reality at this point in time. Does that make sense? So it was the same thing the Climate Council had to deal with. There was a delay in the implementation of this law. I'm just now getting to this room. So I was not a part of the previous processes, nor able to participate in the previous months. Does that make sense? So that's what we're so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I want to be very clear that the timeline expected for this process to begin far earlier than this point. So that's why it's off. That's the tension that we're all in. I hope that makes sense.
Well, I think that is, yeah, I mean, I think that's that's also part of this general understanding and expectations piece. And it's, we can work together similarly to say, here's how this process played out. We had certain members appointed to each of, I think in particular, the council, that didn't get appointed until, we were waiting until December or in the spring. And we had one initial meeting that didn't even include everyone. This is all just kind of recognition of how it's played out to date, but also looking forward, what possibly to expect. And then we can, each body, any stakeholder can kind of put their voice out there in advocating for adjustments to those timelines. And again, it's not any one agency or the interagency committee that makes that decision. And it's also the agency is trying to maintain a level of accountability to the General Assembly. We are separate bodies. We're trying to say, hey, you asked us to do these things by these dates. Here's what we were able to accomplish. It's iterative in nature. I just want to recognize those different elements, and that the law includes consultation for several elements. And I think I'll just leave it at that.
What happens if you can repeat the question real quick? What happens if the deadlines are not met?
The question is, what happens if the deadlines are not met?
I think it just, there's various ways to look at it. It can undermine confidence in the whole thing. These were the expectations, you are all years off, what happened, just having to be really intentional about like helping share information about this process, because I think that can undermine trust from any different angle, and like the credibility of everybody that's engaged in the work, unless we're really open and identifying these different factors, especially when we're deciding to take a certain approach.
Maybe an approach would be just to recognize that maybe an approach to start moving forward would be to recognize that this is taking longer just because we're trying to do something different that it has been done before, and we have been delayed for some of these things that we're trying to change. So I think we need to walk the walk and kind of start and see what happens as we try to change and give the risk. I think we're just maybe holding back just to make sure that we don't miss out. But if we move on, maybe we don't. And if we miss out later, we should, again, readjust. You know, we're not going to yes. I don't know.
Is anyone else having trouble hearing?
Yeah, I can't hear.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
I
think
was-
you're muted and I wasn't sure if it was on my end.
Someone, I mean, nature has muted me here. So
I just wanted to take track of this back and forth.
Yeah, Carla, Claire, a member of the speak.
Yeah. And then, so 3 and 14. Okay.
This is part of from the Agency of Natural Resources, and for myself and you know the space that I represent, there are other members agencies who can weigh in. But in terms of the conversations that we've had, if there's recognition that there may be timelines and deadlines that are not going to be met. And then there will be a conversation around why the reasons, what's causing the delay. For example, we had the per diem issue that needed to be resolved, and so deadlines were pushed back. And so in terms of the actual substantive work that needs to be done, I think there's a general understanding that building trust and these principles and engaging meaningfully with community members takes time. And so if that means that after a careful effort and meaningful effort to actually meet the deadlines and work towards supporting the meaning of the deadlines, like actual effort, then there is a moment of reckoning where, it's going to be impossible for this body to meet a particular deadline, given, a distinct set of reasons, and perhaps this is that could be presented to the legislature, and we can get an extension. I think this is a conversation that can be had, and I think it's part of the work that we're doing. We need to push back some deadlines to do this work the right way. Then we should have a conversation about, let's just then consider doing that.
So let's see, there. You want to go further, you want the way you want to go, and.
I'm actively Department of Public Service here. I'll be really brief. I just wanna honor what Kaya said about us releasing for the kind of recognize that and enforce it. I also want to recognize you on saying that I feel like the deadline to do this because this work is urgent. I thought it was a mistake for people.
We're having trouble hearing again.
Just saying this is a space that feels important to the advisory council.
We can't hear anything right now.
I did work pretty extensively with Jen and the team at the Willowbrook and Applegate apartments at DEC grant last year, and we learned a lot with the district there. In my time going around, just surveying areas that seem to have gaps from agencies which seem to be down, quite frankly. I came across a very strong community desire to talk about climate and flood resilience, and we are having that meeting September 23rd. I'm going to be using the style of meeting that the team pioneered, or I'm not quite sure developed it, but we're doing it. Lake Karen, September 23rd, pretty much all day. We're partnered with Bennington College's capital program, town of North Bennington, a whole bunch of community partners. So if you guys want an opportunity to experiment, paying for it. So it won't cost you guys a dime unless somebody wants to help out, because it's very expensive. So yeah, that's my pitch. Happy to contribute where I can.
Thank you. Okay.
This is just I feel like we're spending more time trying to figure out how can we fit the deadline about trying to get more focus on what we need to do. And I get it right when Kyle mentioned something about KJ probably being also part of the issue causing the delay. Because I was having a hard time trying to understand why we can move forward and say, okay, let's try to how we can so that if I believe we have some issues, for instance, you feel like we don't have enough time to go over our meeting, instead of just meeting every 3-4 months. I don't want to meet 2 times because I'm scared of one thing. If we continue to miss our deadline, it's actually affecting the whole what we're supposed to do. It's acceptable to me if we miss one deadline, then we have to be careful in such a way that that doesn't affect the whole program. Otherwise, we need to be positive also, right? So people will judge us based on how serious we're taking the work we're supposed to do. So that's something I want us to keep in mind. I like the fact that we must, first of all, prioritize what we're supposed to do. Understand we all have different schedules, different activities that let's do our best, get the work done on time.
All right, so I would love to wrap this up in half an hour. Can we get your principles and then schedule more time based How do we feel? I've made some tweaks. So this now, I hope, represents that we're talking about all the deliverables that the Interagency Committee and Agency Natural Resources, like as a, not as covered agency, but like as its own entity, making that all the special things that we have going on. That we will not move those things forward without AC member consent, that the consent will include justification around where we're at, but I added that we're collectively going to advocate for flexibility in deadlines,
we need to address substantive concerns. Law that calls for deadlines, but also calls for us to meaningfully consult with people. So we need to hold that as our legal commitments here. And then to Nivik's point, recognizing we were in good faith here trying to do another temperature check with our thumbs up, down, sideways about where we're at with this. Okay, thumbs up. And can anybody who's on a sideways or down put their hand up so I can just sort of see where we're at in that one. Okay, so Carla, you were.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, Carla, Agency of Natural Resources, if the first sentence, consensus one, the AAC/ANR will not finalize deliverables addressing the law if the AAC not in a consent position, and then eliminate the paragraph because it was mentioned earlier that the AAC will make a recommendation whether they have consensus or not. So, you know, the position is going to come as a collective. So there's going to be consensus, there's going to be agreement or not. It's just, yeah, like the individual members' positions is not going to change the.
Unless the individual EAC is the reason the group is not.
Exactly,
Yes.
correct. So it's the bottom.
All right, so that put you in a thumbs up. Can we do like a full thumbs up? Also online, please put a thumbs down actively if you're like, hey, I'm still here. Yeah, we do it. Okay. Beautiful. It's important. It's very much. Do we feel like we can stop right now and follow with that when we're gonna get our meetings on the schedule? Let me know we need to be alive and quickly for the next week. And Alex and I will follow up and get a doodle pull out and figure it out. Okay. So let's wind down this part. Let's all like take a breath, shake off whatever, like get some blood pumping, give ourselves a minute. Because I would love for us to use some of our time to actually start to have a conversation about community engagement. If that's what feels like, yeah, okay. I do have a little reading that I wanted to offer to sort of grab us into that portion if somebody else wants to read it. That's rad from emergent strategy. But also we want to take like let's take like a 3-minute break, yeah, just like so we can like, I don't know, reset our mood a little bit. Because the next part of this agenda is really beautiful and important. So I'm going to suggest the original proposal was that we do a listening session centering. Thanks. The original proposal is we would do a listening session with the advisory council and members of the public, all open to speak in response to prompts that Marion's going to lead us in to help us think about community engagement. And the charge for the interagency and the agency staff is to listen and start to take notes, to start drafting these point statements, right? And so we were going to do that together actively. That'll be homework. That's where we're at with timing. But I think doing the listening session would be a really beautiful thing unless the advisory council wants to. So let's go with that plan. Just take a 2-minute break and then we'll grab it. Okay, thanks everyone.
Should we get these ones? We're trying to make spaces so everybody else here can't hear. So we're making everybody came up
Let's try to bring it in. Hi, everyone. Let's try to anchor yourself back in. We're 25 minutes together.
All right, yep, everyone come back on in. Find your seat. Gonna take this last section off. So we have a reading that we'd like to start. So just for a little bit of context, for the next 20 minutes, the idea is there's going to be a listening session with the advisory council, led by Miriam. And interagency folks, get out your pencils and your pens and your computers because you're going to be taking notes and using this feedback to do the first draft of the core principles of community engagement. Make sure your note taking is ready. Before we start this, I'm going to go to Miriam. Have a brief reading from David Mary Brown's Versus Strategy. And I'm wondering if anyone, advisory council member, would feel comfortable sharing this reading with the group? Any volunteers? Brown is back in. Anyone? Okay, I'll repeat myself. Here it is.
there is such an urgency in the multitude of crises we face. It can make it hard to remember that, in fact, it is the urgency thinking, urgent, constant, unsustainable growth that got us to this point, and that our potential success lies in doing deep, slow, intentional work. It is so important to cultivate our patience, our thoughtfulness, our willingness to slow down and seek the wisdom of those who are not already part of our movement, not to get them in step with our point of view, but because we need their lived experiential wisdom to shape solutions that will work for the majority of living beings. I'm going to stop there. And with that, setting the tone, I'm going to hand it over to Miriam, and we have some questions, and really excited to hear advisory councils. And public, yes. So please feel free. I will track this. Who's going to talk next? So if you want to speak, just raise your hand, or I think we can get yes. Correct. On the screen.
Thank you, everyone. We only have 20 minutes with 6 questions. Yep. So wish me luck. So first question is that what are some best practices for community engagement in your opinion / observation?
Yes.
You want to come here? Or
Yeah, I think it's first to use the sweet spot, which apparently that's it.
Inside the square.
Great, I'll use the sweet spot. I think the first one is like what we expect from communities. I think that there's been a shift to say like, oh, communities have the solutions. And I feel like there's like I think if we think of it as a partnership, right? If I have a partner, I don't go to them and say like, here's my needs, here's exactly what we're gonna do to like meet those needs. I say, here's my needs, let's make a plan together of how to meet those needs. So they know what their needs are. They don't necessarily know all the roadmap to get there. So I think going to communities and expecting them to know the roadmap is a lot, especially because they're not competent. And so I think knowing that they know their needs and then creating a process that creates a roadmap is very different than going to them and saying, tell us exactly what we should do. That was the first point. I had a second point. Oh, right, which is about, and which I think is how to implement that, which I think is, and I think that this is very important because I think this is the biggest mistake of like well-intentioned community engagement is that you do so much upfront work on like what we want for the feedback. We do so much like surveying and all the other things, and then we come up with something at the last minute, right before the deadlines. And then people are like, well, I don't like these specific things of what you came up with. And we're like, well, there's no time. Here's a few things we can change to try to get there. And then we push it through. So I think it's very important to not front load all of the community engagement as much as like that feels right sometimes. And instead to create a draft and then let people have lots and lots of time to react to that. Because that's where people actually have opinions. Like when they have something that they can hold and they can say, oh, I don't actually really like this thing that I'm holding. I would like it to look like this. So I would encourage us to not get so bogged down in the process of that we try to do all of the community engagement up front, and then when we get to the substance of stuff, we don't have time to actually get their feedback. Best practices.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room or online about best community engagement practices in your opinion or experience? We have 2 in the room. Okay. Can you guys come on the spot? We'll take online as well. Just raise your e-hands on the screen. Thank you. As someone who was involved in the drafting of the original recommendations for Act 154, and has been doing organizing work for a while, don't reinvent the wheel. A lot of communities have told the government what they need and what they want, and sometimes going back and checking back in on that. So reaching out to people and being like, is this still what you're asking for? Is this still resonating with you? That is going to be a better way to go than doing another request for proposal, and doing the work all over again with folks who are already, making a lot of plans, giving a lot of input, are maybe feeling really, really exhausted by that work. So making sure that you've got your backmatch before you think about asking for someone's time, regardless of whether you're compensating folks or not.
Thank you, it's very helpful. Thank you.
Just again, from an outsider's perspective, whenever I FaceTime, especially from agency folks in our farther flung regions, the importance of that cannot possibly overstated. When I have a discussion with a town selectman or a community group that is interested in doing a project, and I say I will try and get someone from an agency down there, and they laugh in my face, that is not a good thing at all. And I experience that almost every day in my job as a conservation district manager. And as we are a state agency, it vastly undermines people's trust in their government. Can't overstate that enough. You guys need to get out into the sticks more. I drove 2.5 hours to be here. You guys can drive 2.5 hours.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, that is right pronunciation. The first person you are not here, so I will repeat for you because we are taking input from everyone. So what are some best practices of the community engagement in your opinion or experience? You want to add to that? You don't have to if you're not ready, but just let you know that we are having a conversation around that. I'll listen. Sure. It's not over here.
In the square. So, well, the first thing I really wanted to point to was just like was that, using what we have, and I want to make clear some of the resources that already exist, and you've all seen them. I hope you've actually read them too, but the Just Transit, the Guiding Principles for Just Transition, in addition to this report on connecting people to power. So in lieu of listing all the best practices for community engagement, I would say this report. But I would say though, like super high level, the recognition that it's worth it kind of needs to permeate the agency's culture, that taking the time to talk to people throughout every year forever. Like we will always be in communication with our community. We'll build better policies from the get-go and save time and actually be more effective, have better outcomes. And I recognize interagency committee members, you are now the ambassadors of this message in your agency. And that's just such an important role because you're also everything that has to do with the rules that we're doing, you're also proxy elected officials, so you're supposed to represent people. That's what we're all here to help with that process. Paying the community members, liaisons, like that was a really great model, and that every agency should think about how to do that in a way that's coordinated, that is coordinated, that's not like everybody has a separate. I mean, that's another piece of what we can develop here is a coordinated community engagement model for the state. And let's see here. I think building, reviewing, when you have your community engagement plans, building into your timeline, kind of living with it, engaging with your engagement plan, going back through and checking off if you are accomplishing what's listed in there. So, that obviously takes time. So recognize mental offenses. I want to say in reference to the Brian mentioned about reflecting on the draft. And that's another thing. You can find a lot of recommendations in this report about changing kind of the culture of responding to public comments. That this should be a dialogue, not just like, oh, the public commented and now this is our responsiveness report, and then that's the end of the conversation. I want to say something about the Climate Council because it's been brought up. That process, it was pretty shocked to me when I heard you say before that there's an implementation grade. That's wild to me, because I have not seen a plan. I thought there was a draft. I thought there was a draft that came out of that council, and that if there's a final version, that has not been done. I haven't any effort to engage with that plan at all, and I do with like the juncture communication and that. That's what we don't want to do here. So definitely building that iterative ability to respond to public comment and actually, where I think as advisory, not advisory, but as the agency ambassadors in the room, for you to be able to, you and all folks in the agency who are attending, listening to community members as we develop, you're putting what is said through your agency here, which is important. Like you have, they have expertise and you have expertise, and that's kind of what I was getting to. You know, it's not going to be, it's not all on you to come up with all the ideas, it's not all on the community members, but that it's really important that we do that kind of filtering, and then check. You get the right answer. Keep, you know, expecting to be.
Thank you, very helpful, two-way communication, keeping the community engaged. The way just not taking input and leave them over there, because we are going to have to get back to community engagement answers. I know I'm supposed to facilitate this, but I'm also a meeting member, so I also want to speak. Yes.
I was going to let you, I really asked to your voice, someone told it, but, so, thank you, Kaya Morris, she, her, again, so, advisory council, I think what Jennifer just spoke to as well, those documents are going to be very helpful. Another piece that's going to be really important, and also not only building trust, but building trust in the engagement process, is go to it seeking a way to yes. What we tend to do, especially if we come with our titles, is say, I hear you, that's not going to happen, right? My job as a community organizer, as a community leader, as somebody who's trying to be liaised, to get to the yes. So they need to be heard with curiosity, and they need to be treated as a possibility. Because while that person may not have the technical expertise to tell you exactly how to make that work, if you're coming at it from an instantaneous no, which is usually the position of state government, right? No, we can't afford it. No, we can't do it. No, it's not possible. No, we don't have the technology. But all that aside, find a way to the yes first. Then work your way back and say, yes, and. So that's going to be key, I think, because people feel like they're always given the immediate no without the ability to even explore the possible yes. That would be something I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room or online on this question? I have 5 more questions. All right, so my next question is, can we ask for that person online? Yeah, I'll go back to them again if they wanna.
I've been keeping an eye on it, and I put a question in the chat. Does anyone on the call who hasn't spoken want to weigh in on the questions? I can continue to prompt the group here.
Sure, that would be helpful. So can we move on to second question for now?
I'm not hearing any other input.
Sure, thank you. So the second question is, what Vermont state agencies are involved in community engagement in your area? And the purpose of keeping this question was to see that what are the existing platforms in specific areas or in specific parameters, like we are representing communities over there, which we can utilize, or also assess that if there are any community engagement by the state agencies at all. So, anyone online or in the room? Were you part of any community engagement which was held by any state agency ever in your life? Or have you attended any platform where community engagements were Were there, Jen, you were, part of climate justice previously? Oh,
I participated.
okay, so if there were like any platforms or any platforms which you're aware of which still exist. Someone was referring this meeting that, Mariana, you mentioned that, no, I don't know who that was. But they were saying that, their preferred method is to just request in already existing platforms or the meeting platforms at the community faces, which are already there, and just request them that can be part of that and try to see. My question is that are there, yes, sorry. That's a very difficult question.
So I haven't done a lot of work with state agencies, so just want to be aware, so I have such a positive view. I feel like I've been more with the legislature, because I think we're kind of like, doesn't matter if they say we're just gonna do what we want. But for I just wanted to call out, and I kind of thought Brittany, but she may be watching her kids, there is an environmental justice network, which is meeting August 18th and 19th, I believe. And I know that I will be facilitating a few sessions there around what their vision is, or what members' vision is for what environmental justice looks like in the state. So I think that's a good time to not bring our agenda, but to just hear what the outcomes are, and try to incorporate that into our work here.
Thank you. Anyone else? Or any of this state representative over here, they can guide us that they have been conducting any community meetings or interacting in communities, or this is the first time that's gonna happen.
Question in the.
Yes, we have online. Rachel, please.
Yes, so someone has asked me to read a question or a comment from the chat, so I'm just going to read from the chat. Draft documents as much as possible ahead of time for public to read and have input at the next public meeting. The guide for core principles of community engagement, for example, is very helpful and can be shared. Reflection on the Climate Council public input meeting. There was not enough time to digest and comment on the documents that were presented in the meeting.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Of course, giving that's what we were discussing in the first part as well. And thank you for bringing up again that we need to give enough time to the communities, reflect and take their inputs and opinion, and then get back to them. Of course, and it's really, really important that for the communicating to the communities that's why we are meeting them, what's our agenda. We need to be very clear and give them time to their input. Anyone else? Or I should move to next person next. Online, Rachel, is there anyone else online for this question? All right. Looks like we are going to go for next question, but there's also a point to ponder that we really need to identify the platforms that how we are going to engage community. And the last meeting which I had with Steve Alex and Carla for community engagement, that I'm aware of few existing platforms like I'm Muslim, so there's like mosque where other Muslims gather on Friday prayers. So that is one platform where I'm thinking of engaging with them. Then there were a few organizations with doing more with the communities like African American Living Association. They also engage with communities. So there are existing platforms which each one of us can identify that we should be using and discuss with Caroline team and facilitate us about what kind of environmental justice concern those communities have. Like I was particularly concerned about Africans, Afghanis. There are a lot of Afghani people who recently moved here because of their situation in the country. There are a lot of Pakistani Indian communities, don't have access to a lot of resources that I'm aware of. I was thinking to engage with them on those platforms, and they're like, a lot of platforms which connect those communities based on religion. I know that might not be a really good idea, but those are the platforms where we can engage with them based on whatever concern they have. And of course, we'll ask specific questions from them about their environmental concerns so that they know what we are asking from them, and that should not be like too technical for them because not everyone is understanding the science behind it, but they know the answers and solutions. So that was my opinion on this question. So the third question is, during state agency committee engagement, what are common missteps? So from the second question, we saw that we don't really have a lot of community engagement. So I think if someone had experience in the past, they can share what are the common missteps which the state agencies use while engaging communities. Jen, do you want to come here again?
Carla had her hand up.
Sure, after Jen, or do you have to come this?
I don't know if I'm going to speak exactly that, but I guess just to be clear, there are definitely try to do community engagement. From my experience in the conservation district, we do a lot of it around water and agriculture. There's a really important process that's not a lot of people know about called the local working group. It's our process. It's run by the local conservation district. And I guess I really wanted to share a story. Recently, a farmer was impacted by flood called our conservation district, and their home was flooded. The TEC came out because they had a weasel leak in their basement. TEC charged them $250 inspection, and they had to pay it. Their home was condemned. They're sleeping in a shed. The father died. There's a whole other story, not to mention the animals in the flooding field. But I guess what I'm saying is that I would love to have kind of process that goes beyond like a complaint process, but almost just if people could realize, and people in agencies, like when you see something, say something, if there was a course of action that you could take, when you see something that's just like, that was not felt right to charge people $250, but is there a process that you as an agency representative can, come to the advisory council and alert, and then say things to the public to have that built in, communication. Reaction to that.
Thank you, very helpful. I'll go to Carola. She raised her hand first, and then I'll come to you, Kyle.
We are at the board, so just honor folks' time too. We should try to-
Yeah, it's already 4 o'clock. Okay.
Just really quick on, I think one of the biggest missteps is to ask for input and then ignore it. So I think it's important that after you get input, concrete changes actually get made and responsive to it.
Carla, Agency of Natural Resources. I was not gonna speak to this because the comment had not been made, but Kyle, that really resonates, building into community engagement plans and in the process of sharing information and getting information on accountability process so that the feedback that's received actually is gathered by the agency and something concrete is delivered is really important. And I think that also contributes to the building of the trust. But what I wanted to mention is, Ryan, when you were mentioning all of the immigrant living in Vermont now, is language access and how important providing meaningful language access is when we're thinking about engaging with communities in Vermont and anywhere else, right? But I think the state we all should commit to doing a better job around language access. And really the way that we have to engage with others to make sure that we're doing it and it's inclusive.
Thank you. I don't know how we're gonna proceed with that because it's already 4:00 and what do you say, Pete?
Yeah, I think this leaves us with like clearly an individual on this. So what's our next step? Do we want to have another joint meeting and sort of like pick up from here and maybe start to talk about benefit spending? Maybe a commitment to just like get another time together and on there and have breakout time built in as much as that feels useful. Yeah, yeah.
I think we may need to like, because we have had a separate meeting, and
Yeah.
we may need to have one meeting where we kind of do things as individual groups together.
Okay, great. All right, great. So we'll follow up on this or with that information to get those both like separate and like all the calendar to pick this up. And then I think interagency committee members, I heard like very clearly recommendation, there's a lot of good info already out here. In reports that it's not much. So I think we will follow up with you all about how we maybe start to put some pen and paper to put some of what we heard today down plus what we've heard in the past. To then go through sort of iterative review processes that we talked about. So we'll follow up on that piece too. Mary, thank you so much for like facilitating this piece. Thank you to everyone who facilitated different parts of this agenda. And
we did have one comment. I just want to make sure it's in the record in the chat. Not that there's a record. Thebes, sorry.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Just sorry, one more community comment. I think about the missteps question was that at the Climate Council public input meeting, it was too controlled by the facilitator in parentheses A&R for public to answer the questions that were presented and not enough leeway for people to make their own suggestions. So just want to make sure that comment made its way.
Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate that. Beautiful. Okay.
Great.
I think
No, just, yeah.
All right, yeah, so you want to it's 4 o'clock, so immediately, we were gonna have us close out by going on to reach the state. One, we're rather feeling right now, we feel like that'd be nice to close it out, we can all just like, I do want to point out that they are to-go containers. So I would really encourage folks to like load up, take it home, whatever. Is like Alex and I are like deeply humbled by holding these positions with you all, and it's just been an incredible joy to learn from alongside you. And like, tell you to tell us what you need. So don't be shy to call, text, email, whatever. Yeah, we don't need to get in meetings. We also need feedback and perspective on how things are rolling out, and we'll do our best. I like them. Whoa, all right. You know, we're a team champion. Thank you. I'm not sure. Incredibly appreciated, and we will, as always, work on making hybrid work better. So thank you for your patience. And then I was curious for anyone who's open to having a group photo taken. If you can do so, yeah. So yeah. And I want to be clear, the photo testing of Marion was just of Marion. And no one else in this timeline on consensually. So yeah, if anyone wants to take a group photo, maybe put Monday over here. Otherwise, please take leftovers. And thank you so much, truly, for showing up the organic process that we're
Thanks, and Alex.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, really appreciate the mic patience.
Yeah, sorry about the communication.
That's okay. I mean, we're learning each time, so we'll learn and improve for next time. Really appreciate it, and thanks to everyone else.
Yeah, next time we'll get. Thank you.
Sean, Alexa.